Everyone. We'll be starting in the next 4 minutes, which is waiting for all the delegates to join us. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Pre-MCOP. I'm Avni, the Senior Program Officer for Content and Training at WWF-India in the Environment Education Division. This is the second and final day of Pre-MCOP. After this, we will be meeting all the delegates on ground in Delhi on the 10th of July. I extend a very warm welcome to all the observers who have joined us virtually. This is a gentle reminder to kindly rename yourself. The Zoom name needs to have your name followed by the name of your state. So Avni, Delhi, that is how you need to rename yourself. So before we move to the sessions for today, I would like to know what's the mood for today. All the delegates need to show me how you're feeling on this mood meter. Please feel free to move your arm around on where you stand on the scale. So leftmost is I'm fine, then it's I'm cool, then I'm hopeful, I'm cheerful, I'm excited, and I'm thrilled. So the leftmost is I'm fine, and the rightmost extreme is I'm thrilled. I want to see all of your arms moving around. I'm very thrilled. I'm very excited to meet all of you and for the session. I don't see everybody's arms. Awesome. I see that most of you are very excited, thrilled. Okay. So I see that since we're very excited, we can move on. So like yesterday, we're starting the session with a fun round of icebreaker. It's called the Jungle Jumble. If someone's forgotten, here's how it works. You'll see a set of jumbled alphabets on the screen, and your task is to find as many animals as you can from these letters. You have 1 minute to write down the names of the animals you find in the chat box. Good luck, and let's see how many jungle creatures you can find. Okay, I see leopard. I see hare. Zebra. A rhino. I don't see a rhino. A whale. Yes. A hornbill. Not really. I think there's one animal that we're missing out. I'll give you a very simple clue. One of those animals appears on the screen, so you can see them right now. Can anybody get it? Yes, exactly. It's a heron. So here are the animals that we've added to the jungle jumble. And thank you for the very, very prompt responsive. We now have another activity for you. So here you'll see a set of pictures. You need to tell me what do these two pictures add to. It could be an animal or a plant. Let's go with the first one. Type your answers in the chat box. Well, awesome. So hornbills play a very vital role in forest regeneration, and they're called the farmers of the forest. They disperse hundreds of fruit tree species in the forest, and the presence of hornbills actually indicates that the forest is not only prosperous but very balanced. This is why hornbills are also considered as indicator species. And India has 9 species of hornbills. Can you identify this hornbill? What species of hornbill is this? Anybody in the chat box, please. Okay. So this is a great hornbill, and it's one awesome. So this is one of the largest. This is the largest of these 9 hornbill species that are found in India, and it is actually found in the foothills of the Himalayas, the northeastern part of the country, as well as the Western Ghats. Can we have the next one, please? Which animal or plant is this? Seahorse. Exactly. So horses are small, but do not let their small size fool you because one seahorse can consume up to 3,000 shrimps in a single day. Can anybody guess how much a seahorse may weigh? Like, how much would it weigh? Would it be like 2 kgs, 5 kgs, 10 kgs? 100 grams. Right. So one seahorse may weigh up to only about 200 grams and it lives for only about 3 years. Can we have the next one, please? Um, any guesses for this? Which plant or animal is this? Woodpecker. No, not a woodpecker. Yes, it's sandalwood. So this is one of the species of sandalwood that is found in India. It's called the red sandalwood. It is endemic to the eastern Ghats of India, and it's one of the most exploited tree species and is under tremendous pressure for illegal logging. Now, which state does it grow in? Can anybody tell me, is it found in your state, this red sandalwood tree? It's not found in Gujarat. Okay. Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, not in Goa. Right. Tamil Nadu, Madhya Pradesh. Yes, it is native to Andhra Pradesh, but it is now also cultivated in other states like Kerala, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Odisha, and West Bengal. So moving on to the next question for you. This is the final one for this activity. Can anybody guess what this is? Is it a plant or an animal? Bush pig. What's a bush pig? Hedgehog. Yes. So a hedgehog's back and sides are covered in long spines, which are really modified hair. A single hedgehog can have nearly 5,000 to 7,000 spines. Can anybody tell me what does a hedgehog eat? Does it eat grasses? Like it's on a grass in the photo that you can see. Okay. A lot of people see grasses. But it's actually a carnivore. So it eats insects, frogs, toads, bird eggs, snakes, and even scorpions. Awesome. So now we'll continue with MCOP, and we have a mix of very exciting activities and lots of learning. For today's session, we have, for today's entire day, we have 3 sessions planned for all of you. The first one is a panel discussion on biodiversity conservation and a whole of society approach, which is going to be moderated by Shreya. The next session is where we'll understand India's step towards achieving goals set by GPF. And the final session today is what makes a conservation success story, where you'll be able to hear successful conservation stories from a few inspiring heroes in India. Then, not to forget, we'll be telling you all about the student body elections also towards the end. And obviously, this is interspersed by lots of fun activities. So without any delay, I welcome Shreya Bhatt to moderate the panel discussion on biodiversity conservation and a whole of society approach.
Well, hello, everyone. And Avni has set such a wonderful tone to the day, getting us all excited about biodiversity and with all these fun activities that we just did. And so this is a great way to actually begin our next session, which is, as you know, this panel discussion, where we are going to talk about a whole of society approach. Okay. And what that basically means is conservation is not something that we can do on our own. We need everyone on board, right? And that means local communities, we need our businesses, governments, even NGOs and individuals like you and me. So this approach actually requires everything to come together. We should find ways to integrate traditional knowledge with scientific research. We should find ways to align our business practices with sustainability and also have policies put in place that support our conservation work. And all of you next week will be here in Delhi. You'll be working on action plans together. And when you implement when at the planning stage, as well as implementing your action plans, you'll need to keep a whole of society approach in mind so that your actions can have long-term effects. Okay, so we've invited some special guests for our discussion, and they can share insights and experiences that you can use for your action plans. So first, I'd like to invite Ms. Shruti Ajit, Program Officer from Women for Biodiversity. So Ms. Shruti has been working in the fields of community-led and community-based conservation, as well as gender and forest rights at both the national and regional levels. She's been a member of the CBD Women Caucus and has been engaged in CBD-related policy and advocacy, bringing in aspects of gender mainstreaming within all biodiversity-related discussions. She's also part of the core group of the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, the India chapter, something that you could also explore. And she's been engaging with youth in building awareness and participation on biodiversity conservation issues in India. So I now hand it over to Ms. Shruti to talk a little bit about her work and experiences and the insights she's gained from them. Over to you.
Thank you, Shreya. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. So quickly, I'm going to, is it possible? Do you have my slides or should I share my screen?
You could share your screen.
Perfect. Okay. So quickly, I'm going to give a quick quiz to everyone to see how much you've listened to Shreya. What do you mean by whole of society? Like, who is part of this whole of society? Like, you can put it in the comments. Just wanted to get a sense of what do you mean when you say whole of society? Yes, we, the people and the community. But like, if you were to think of like groups, who do you think? Community, everyone, we all, yes. Think of it in the conservation sense, like, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm going to, absolutely. So when we say whole of society, it's both the formal and informal institutions. And this is a UNESCO definition, which says it is that approach that embraces both formal and informal institutions in seeking a generalized agreement across society about policy goals and the means to achieve them. Now, within I know that some of you or all of you have been introduced to the Convention on Biological Diversity. So there are groups that are part of the whole of society, and they are they play a very important role in defining some of the policies that gets discussed at CBD level, at global level, national level, regional level. And some of them are women. Then you have all of you, which is children and youth. Then you also have the indigenous peoples and local communities. You have the NGOs. You have businesses and private sectors. And then you have academia, which includes all of you because you're part of schools, colleges, and universities. So they are very important in defining some of the key discussions that are emerging right now at global level and at all levels of policies. So with that, I'm going to give you a quick glimpse of indigenous people, role of indigenous people in local community. So the indigenous communities are 5% of the overall total population in the world, yet they conserve or protect 80% of all of biodiversity right now. So it is very important to understand that conservation cannot happen without people. And when people are there, their knowledge, which is what Shreya spoke about, which is traditional knowledge, is very important to be included into policies, which cannot go further if you don't include the people who are protecting these biodiversities. And if you see on your left side, it tells you about the indigenous people, world population, the amount of Earth's territory that they inhabit, and how much of the biodiversity they are protecting. And here, I just wanted to show you that even so in 2003 in South Africa, Durban was the first time in conservation conversations. Wow, that's like an alliteration. But in conservation conversations, they finally realized that indigenous peoples and local communities are very important to biodiversity. And they recognize the role of indigenous people and local communities and realize that we need to include them in conservation decisions. However, from 2002 to 2015, in these countries, very little has moved forward with their recognition. When you think about you have these global policies where people discuss, but then for it to actually kind of materialize on ground, it's our countries who have to start recognizing some of these things, right? Like they have to implement and they have to recognize that local communities and indigenous people are very important for conservation. However, very little has happened in 13 years and it continues to do so. And there needs to be a stronger push towards more rights recognition and their participation in these discussions. Now, because I've been looking at women, because I work with an organization called Women for Biodiversity, I'm looking at gender. So I'm going to focus on a little bit of role of women within biodiversity conservation. So quickly, women have been a group that has been most impacted from the loss of biodiversity. Women have to walk longer to fetch water, to get firewood, to get food for their houses. And because of that, they've also faced a lot of violence. It has increased because of loss of biodiversity. We are unable to, like, when we think of loss of biodiversity, we see as species lost, but we don't connect it to how it impacts individuals or people to how they are living, right? So when we looked at that, women have been the one who has been the most impacted by the loss of biodiversity because they are the ones who take care of the house. They are the ones who have to take care of the health of the community. They are the ones who take care of the health of their households. And they are the ones who are most impacted by it because they no longer have access, easy access to the biodiversity that our previous generations, our grandmothers and great grandmothers had access to. So that is one challenge. The second is their voices are seldom included in decision-making processes, and participation is still very, very limited. Now, when I say that, how many of what percentage of women are mandatory to be part of various institutions? Does anyone know, like, what how many women need to be included in decision making in India right now? 25, like 1/3, exactly. So 1/3 of any kind of institutions that we have, formal institutions we have, require 1/3 of the institution to be given to women, so that women are recognized and given those seats. However, we find out that it's a very different ball game altogether, right? Sometimes the women are elected, but their fathers or their brothers end up taking the role of running the entire show. So sometimes it becomes, in the sense, just for the sake of actually actually putting it on record, but not actually implementing it. And you also realize that when there are meetings that happen, women are the ones who are caretakers of the home. So they don't have the time and energy to be able to attend these meetings because they are also doing the role of nurturing, like guardians in the house. So institutions currently don't have mechanisms to include women. So even if we have that reservation, that's a first step, definitely. But we need to also look at how that institutional change needs to ensure that women are actively participating in these decision-making processes. And now you include, like all of you, there are so many young people here. So now you include young, youth and women, and you intersect it. So young women are often excluded from decision making, and they often we don't take young women seriously because we feel like usual general um, thing is that young women are underrepresented. They feel like you have to gain a lot of knowledge to be taken seriously in a lot of these decision making processes. This third part is the land rights for women. Now, at this point, in South Asia, 70%, and in sub-Saharan Africa, 60% of women are part of, this is just one small example, which is taking from agriculture. Agriculture, 70% of women in South Asia actually are part of those agricultural processes. However, their land rights are seldom recognized. A lot of women are actually farming, but they are not the ones whose name are in part of the titles, the land rights. And like if you see some of the numbers here, 15 countries are where women don't have equal ownership or rights to property. 34 countries are where daughters do not have equal inheritance rights. 35 countries are where widows do not have equal inheritance rights. And 90 countries where customs inhibit women's access to land. However, now I'm going to, like, I know this is like a very, I wanted to start with all the challenges, but I'm also going to give you a very, like, positive examples of women who are doing something. So before that, I want to ask some of you, like all of you, a question, which is my favorite thing to ask, is when you were growing, like when now that you're growing up, when you get sick, what does your mother or grandmother or any other women in your family, apart from giving you medicines, what are the things that they give you to ensure that you get, you get well quicker? Like, what are the things that they give you? Haldi milk, soup, neem. And so these proper meal, haldi, honey tulsi. So these are actually examples of traditional knowledge that is usually given by women. And they are the ones who keep it and transmit it to the next generation. And that's how traditional knowledge gets passed on from one generation to another. And it's usually done by women of every household. And you've seen that with your own households. So I'm going to give you an example of a restoration process that's happening in, I'm sorry, in Africa. It's in this place called West Pokot County, where these women have created these nurseries. And when they are doing restoration, for them, the entire forest has been changed. When the British colonial rule was there, the forest was changed from traditional forests where you have indigenous species to wood species, which include cypress, pine, because they wanted to use that for timber. They wanted to use it for their railway production and to take it back. However, now a lot of that forest is being destroyed. They want to restore it. But for women, their priority is the indigenous varieties to be grown, and these are some of the seeds that they have. And they are also creating a seed bank so that it's not just for their generation, but for future generations to continue growing these indigenous varieties of seeds. Now, these indigenous varieties are meant for their medicinal use, for basket weaving and all kind of other craft produce that they use for their everyday, day-to-day work. And they've been doing this with the knowledge that has been passed on from their previous generation of the biodiversity that used to exist around them and is slowly becoming extinct. So, and this is an example of them now to ensure that the restoration actually continues and to reduce the amount of pressure on the forest. These women have started making energy efficient stoves that allows them to use less firewood, also keep their chickens warm, and continue doing whatever they're doing with less dependence on the firewood from the forest. So they have created systems in place and governance mechanisms in place where they are trying to ensure that their restoration is something that lasts for 2 generations beyond them. And that's their dream. Now we go to another part of the world and another ecosystem altogether, which is in Costa Rica, where there's a place called Chomis. If you see this, this is a small kind of mollusk that they are allowed to harvest to be sold in the market. Now, what has happened in the last 10 years is that mangroves and these mollusks are found in mangroves. How many of you know what mangroves are? Perfect, perfect. Good to know. So mangroves are these forests that you can find around the coast, and they have these massive roots that help that helps to prevent soil erosion. Because of the rising sea level, these mangroves are very, very critical to be in those spaces to ensure that they hold on to those soil to prevent it from eroding. Now, there's been a large scale destruction of mangroves all over the world. Here, in this case, because of the large scale destruction of mangroves, these particular mollusks that used to be found has been reducing. So these women are also in the process of restoring their mangroves so that they can sustainably extract the mollusk that comes out of them, and they are also creating systems in place where you have to ensure that they are all collectively making decisions. They put processes of free prior informed consent, which is something you will see in future decisions and discussions when you talk about inclusion of indigenous people, local communities, youth, women, that free prior informed consent is necessary to ensure any kind of decision making. They have to be part of those to ensure that their consent is not something that has been forced. It's not something that is done without information. So the women have come together to put in processes of free prior informed consent. They have a little nursery in place, and they create systems which is very, very inclusive and democratic for all the women to benefit from the restoration they are taking care of. Coming to closer to where we are, there are several such examples, even in India itself. You have the Deccan Development Society in Telangana, where women, and they are Dalit women, they are small scale farmer. They are looking at going back, and they have managed to successfully change public distribution system, where you get rice and dal and sugar every month, right? For the below poverty line people, they have managed to create, exchange the kind of rice and things that they get in these public distribution system from through their own indigenous native varieties of seeds, like their native varieties of rice, their native varieties of the jawar and bajra and all of those are there. So they have ensured that the health of the community also gets transformed when women are empowered. Similarly, in Gujarat, you have the Pastoral Women's Alliance, who are looking at, we often leave them out of our discussions because they are always moving. So there are groups with their sheep and goat. I'm sure you would have seen in your area, and you would have seen them moving around with sheep, goats, camel. They are women who take care of all of this, and they have been empowered to talk about why it is important to ensure that it's not just one ecosystem, but the entire landscape that needs to be preserved for for easier access for them to move, for everyone to benefit out of it. So they have been articulating why it's important as pastoral women who are, we would say, nomadic tribes, or pastoral communities, to talk about why pastoral women are very, very important in decision making. Then in Uttarakhand, you have the Van Panchayats, where they have started working on building their own capacities, building their own knowledge systems to be very, very active in their local, their Van Panchayats, which is their government, local government, and they have played a very key active role in some of the decisions around the biodiversity in Munsiari, Uttarakhand. Then you go down, or you go to the northeast, you have the greater Juten stalks. If you've seen, in Assam, they were seen as a bad omen, but and therefore there were a lot of challenges to it. But then some of the women got around and came together, and they spoke about why it's important to conserve them because it's their local habitat, and they call themselves the Hargila Army. And now they're talking about how to conserve it, build conversations around why it's important, take away that taboo of why they are bad or they are not or whatever, which comes from like a different narrative, and challenge those narratives. And then in Odisha, we have women-led protection committees where some of these rights are recognized, and these Adivasi women have created these protection committees to go around the forest to ensure that nobody's cutting their forest. They do these patrolling. They themselves became people who are patrolling this. So this is great. We'll have Dr. Poonama talk about the Hargila Army today. So that's amazing. It's quite great to see that. So we have women-led protection committees in Odisha. So with such positive examples, it's only important that women, indigenous people, local communities are included in decision-making processes because they are integral to the conservation of biodiversity. So what is the way ahead? We need the recognition of rights, which is not just inclusive, but it's also just. So it should be recognition of rights, land rights. It could be recognition of rights to access things. It could be recognition of rights to govern and manage their own natural ecosystems. So these are in the form of various rights recognition, to ensure that women, indigenous people, and local communities are there and have equal say in the kind of things on how to manage, how to govern their ecosystems. Then second is, of course, the full, equal, and effective participation that comes with processes of full, free, prior, informed consent. You have to ensure that their participation is not just tokenistic, but it's full and equal and effective. And that means that at all levels, from your global to national to your local levels, including the BMCs, you need to include these groups because they have a larger part in protecting the biodiversity than any others who are there, because it directly links to their livelihoods, to their lives, to their culture, to their history. And then we are talking about equal access and benefits of natural resources. So when we say that, we talk about, let's say, let's give an example of how when we are taking a particular kind of, um, let's say, uh, a particular species of mushrooms are being harvested, and it's been harvested by these indigenous people and local communities. However, they need to also have equal benefits from the sale of this. So you need to have knowledge about the various kinds of market prices, the minimum support price that needs to be put in place to protect the interests of these communities so that they have equal access and benefits from the sustainable use of natural resources. And lastly, this is something that we often forget, is we need to have like laws and policies in place protect the environmental human rights defenders. Now, who are these human rights defenders? It could be anyone from a journalist to an individual. All of you, if you are talking about this, if you're talking about protecting a particular ecosystem or you want to work towards it, we need to have laws and policies in place for citizens to be able to have a right to protect our local biodiversity. It also includes um, a lot of people, a lot of indigenous leaders and local communities, women who are part of this. So we need to ensure that there is enough and more legal systems at national level to protect the rights of environmental human rights defenders. With that, I'm going to end. Thank you to the WWF team for including me. It was really nice, and I hope you guys enjoyed this session.
So thank you, Ms. Shruti. Well, this was supposed to be a panel discussion where, I raise questions at this point, but judging from our session yesterday with the students, I know they're going to have a lot of things to ask you. So what I'd like to do is invite our next speaker. And if Ms. Shruti, of course, if you can stay back for the rest. I'll invite our next speaker, Dr. Praveer Deshmukh, to speak, and then we can open the floor up to all our students. I'm sure they have lots to ask both of you. So let me just introduce Dr. Praveer Deshmukh. He is a senior counselor with the Confederation of Indian Industry and is an expert in the field of biodiversity risk management, environmental management, and sustainable development. He has a PhD in botany and has developed guidance documents and best practices for business for biodiversity risk management. And at CII CESD, he manages the India Business and Biodiversity Initiative and works with businesses, governments, and stakeholder organizations to drive conservation and sustainable management of ecosystem services. So thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Praveer. Over to you.
Hi, good morning all. I hope you are able to see my screen and I'm audible to all of you. Anybody can confirm? Hello?
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Yeah, thanks. So I think this is just a brief introduction, the platform which I'm managing. And I think as you have seen in the previous session, the businesses are also very important stakeholder of the nature or biodiversity conservation on its management. So I'm working with that stakeholder, and definitely it is not only with the business, because when you say as a biodiversity, it is not limited to business, because anybody can't control biodiversity. So we can't control whale shark because it's continuously moves, it's interact with multiple systems in the ocean. So similar with the business and biodiversity linkages, that it can't be a single person or single thing is managed. But again, there are how the overall linkages has been managed as a part of this thing, that is very important. And I think this is just I'm showcasing that again in the definition of biodiversity, you can see that everyone is part of this definition. So it's a species between species and the ecosystems. And similar, when we are saying that the whole society approach, everyone should be a part of it. We can't eliminate any stakeholder. So it might be the woman, it might be the tribal community, it might be the kids, or even businesses, or even different institutions. So even the research institutes or engineering, or even you can say the AI, uh, the the present IT systems where we can monitor some of the things for not going on the sites, or even the night monitoring and all these things can be done with this similar tools and all these things. So there isn't definitely a important partner or important role they can play managing the biodiversity, and that's why this is what we are working as a part of the nature the CII, because it's a industry association, and we're trying to help industry that what is the linkages with the nature, with the industries, how it has been impacting, or how it has been. So it is a both side impact, how they are impacting because of the climate change or the biodiversity loss, and what are the dependencies they are on this nature. So as you know, there are this 4-5 major drivers of biodiversity losses: loss of habitats, pollution, invasive species, climate change, and overexploitation. And again, you can see in every phase there is a business linkage, because we are developing our road infrastructures, we're developing our rail connectivities to transfer goods from one place to another, to transfer people from one place to other. And again, then the businesses will come, and then how we are interacting with these natural habitats. Similar with the pollutions, because we are not able to manage the population, the waste management, and all these things, that again resulting into the degradation of rivers, water bodies, and different parts. And some of the businesses, they source water from these rivers or wetlands and all these things. So they do face a challenge because they also need a much better water quality so that they can continue their sustainable productions. If the water is not available properly, it will definitely have a cost impact to them. Then again, invasive species, whenever we move, we try to get the plants which we like, and that may result into the invasive species, which is again resulting into the biodiversity loss. Uh, and then I think very important parameter is the climate change, because we have changed biodiversity in lots of areas, that again triggering more and more climate issues like the forest fires, and you can see what happens in the summer in the Uttarakhand and Himachal, that continuously it is under fire. Different forest patches has been automatically or naturally get burned because we have changed the habitat. We have done some alterations to them, and that resulting into the issues. But again, at the same time, you can see what is happening because of climate change to biodiversity. And I think one of the good example is the turtle gender ratio, where it is happening if the temperature of the hatchlings or the eggs hatching is below 27 degrees Celsius, then mostly the males will come as a outcome. Of if it is going beyond 33 degrees Celsius, the most of the females hatchlings come out of uh, that from the eggs. But if it is maintained with between the 27 degree to 31 degrees or below 33 degrees, it is a mixed type of population, both male and female. And again, if there are more male or more female, again, the breeding and all these cycles will get affected. And again, they also play a very critical role in our ocean system management. They are also important for ocean carbon sequestration, which again, they are whatever the algae and other things they are consuming that actually been stored for a longer time. And again, this is a role they are playing. And because of climate change, this change is also happening. So again, climate change is again both the way. When we change biodiversity systems, climate change occurs. And because of climate change, also the biodiversity losses happens. And again, businesses are also facing these issues because lots of their challenges or their sourcing patterns, their requirement is also interlinked with the with the nature part. And finally, the overexploitation. I think this is a very critical issue for lots of businesses. Like take an example of some of the Ayurveda medicines we are using, or some of the cosmetic products we are using, which is actually based from the plant's material. And what happening that because the scarcity or overexploitation in the past or unsustainable extraction, the cost of raw material has increased. As the cost of raw material has increased, the marketing, finished product cost is also increasing. And there are also buyers, which is more focusing on the sustainable product. And if it is not sustainable, the companies are also facing challenges that their product may not sell, or if they are not following the sustainability part in sourcing and managing the sourcing, then also they are not able to sell the product whatever the market demands. So there are linkages the business in a multiple ways, and I think there are also in some of the areas definitely because of them issues are happening. But also because of these issues, they are also facing challenges for their business sustainability. So this is just a diagram how the nature is integral part of each and everything. So let's take an example that we do have impacts and dependencies. So the businesses also have a dependency on nature or impacts on nature. At the same time, the society also have the linkages, and that's why the whole society approach is required for the nature conservation. And again, then this impacts and dependency definitely drives to cost and financial issues, and then that is called as a risk and opportunities, that how we can produce sustainable products, how we can source water much better, or how it can be wetlands can be protected. And here actually what we are trying to do, I will just skip this slide because we have discussed this. Uh, or Again, this is the both the drivers that if economic growth is growing and we are not managing our natural resources very properly, there the biodiversity loss happens. But again, at the same time, if we are not managing our biodiversity, there is an degradation of ecosystems happens, and then it leads to pollutions or the biodiversity losses drivers will come into actions, and then that will also leads to economic losses or financial impacts. I will just give you one example. This is an assessment what we did for lots of wind and solar companies, and they have a different types of impacts in a different stages of operations. And I think when you are developing this management plans or the actions for the whole society approach, we also need to understand that what is happening at what locations or what stage of the activities, and then what should be the action plans or how should be our targets to be planned, or what activity should be planned at the level 1 or level 2 or different stages. So again, there are different impacts of the wind and solar projects. There is definitely a land use change happens when the construction is going on. They do cut trees or transport them. Then pollution is happening in the construction phase. But when they are in operation phase, there are different challenges. So it's a habitat fragmentation. There is a growth of non-native species or soil and dust emissions and all these things. And then also there is in operation, there are chances that because there are grasses and continuous involvement of the human intervention in that area, the fires can happen. There are companies who are trying to use chemical weedicides, which is again impacting on the nature part. Water using for the solar panels cleaning or other management, where again they are extracting somewhere from outside and then doing it on their locations. And very important for the wind project is again the collagen of birds. So again, so you can see the impacts understand, and I think that what the role of education institutions or the research bodies need to support them, that where what activities should be done, and that will actually reduce the nature issues and biodiversity loss impacts. So what we are doing at center, and maybe I will explain through each and every part. So at present, we are supporting businesses to understand what is their risk or how they are linked to biodiversity. Then again, we're also building a partnership. So when we are understand the risk or challenges to the biodiversity, then what are the areas you should work? And I think that's where the partnership part comes. Where again, this is one of the area which we started. We are doing partnership for wetland conservations, and now I think there are 82 Ramsar wetlands in India. So we're supporting business partnership for this Ramsar sites management, sustainable management, conservation, and restoration. And again, here is not only the businesses are doing a part of there, but we're also looking at the different communities around that wetlands. because wetland is a system where one person cannot manage it because the water is coming from somewhere else. The water is being utilized by someone else, and again after going into the wetland, the water again flowing back to a different ecosystems or different areas. So there are multiple partners. So there is an upstream partners, there is the main partners, and also the downstream partners, and the different communities are involved. So again, in this partnership, it is the business will support in wetland conservations, but it will be implemented by the local communities, the local stakeholders. The farmers will be a part of it. The villages around that will be a part of it. The grazing communities will be also a part of it. Because it's a whole society approach. We can't conserve wetlands or any ecosystem in isolation. So this is then partnership part. It is integrated as a part of this wetland conservation. And we are actually identifying for each wetland. So for example, let's take an example of the Vembanad wetland, which is in the Kerala. The wetland is definitely used by the tourism or companies. It is being used for fisheries and all these things. So there are multiple stakeholders. And if we want to protect the wetland, the Vembanad wetland, then every one stakeholder has to play their role, important role in it. And again, we are actually identifying for each stakeholder what should be the action areas, what should be the smart target for them, what should be the alternative they should go for this wetland conservation. Then utilizing, going for hybrid ships or sustainable farming or regenerative farming for agriculture, fishermen's, how we can extract the plastic waste which is enter into that wetland, how we can sustainably manage some of the other products which is coming from the wetlands, and also the if the sewage and other pollutions are coming outside from the outside wetland areas, how that can be also restricted or it can be treated with the nature-based solutions and all these things. So there are multiple stakeholders are coming a part of it, and then that wetlands and the ecosystem will be conserved. Uh, and this, I think the third circle you can see is species conservation and ecosystem restoration. So lots of businesses are interested in the species conservation. And let's take an example of the Great Indian Bustard, because lots of solar companies and wind companies are working in their habitat or the Great Indian Bustard habitat. We can't go away because that providing a renewable energy, but how we can best manage that ecosystem. So again, that is also a partnership model we have created. We are working on it, but again, the stakeholder organizations like WWF and other organizations, they are part of this work. And we're also trying to build a different partnership which will work on awareness creations, managing the feral dogs and other things so that they are not hampering the nesting sites and breeding areas of the Great Indian bustards. And also creating awareness within the industries that how best they can manage their existing projects, or if they're planning some new projects, what should be the area they should look at it. So this is again a whole society approach which we have integrated here. And I think very important part, and which is the last circle, which is on the policy advocacy. So again, we're doing policy advocacy to businesses also, that what should be the policy they should adopt. So we're asking them to take a measurable target on nature or a biodiversity by 2030, what they want to achieve by 2050, what they want to achieve to meet the no net living in harmony with nature as a global biodiversity framework targets. Similarly, we're also creating a dialogue within the industries, that within the governments or also the global stakeholders like the CBDs and all these things, that what should be the role of businesses in meeting these targets? What are the policies, enable policies are required, like subsidies, how we can subsidize biodiversity positive work of industries, or if the industry is coming with a new plan, new industries or new startups are coming, how we can give them and subsidies for the proactive approach for biodiversity conservation. So again, this is what multiple areas we are working, and I think very important is that for biodiversity, definitely the whole society approach is required. And if we are doing it isolations, then we might only save a few inch areas or few hectares. But if we want to protect much bigger areas like India's geography, we have to protect each and every species, different habitats. We need a society approach for it. This is just an example where we one of the company who is a resort company. how they have integrated nature as a part of their plans. So again, this is one of the resort they're one of the resort where they have only used 26% of their plot, and 70% plot is they have kept it as it is with the natural plantations. I think what the benefit they have gone out of it is the in the all 200 rooms or 220 rooms there is no AC, so it is totally naturally cooled locations, and you can see in the below photograph that how green it is there. There is no lights and all this thing, and full sun cover, full canopy is there with the natural trees. So this is also an learning that how biodiversity can benefit it to the industries, and you can see when we did the calculation to them that how much cost they have saved because of the not using of electricity for air conditioners. So it is around 1.8 crores per year. So this is what we have done in the past. So this is again just an example that how if we're integrating nature as a part of business decision making involving stakeholders or decisions, and this has not happened because of the company own initiative. Definitely they have partnered with different institutes, research institutes. They have understand what how where they can do the building to be constructed and all these things. So again, it's a collaboration approach, and that resulting into a much more cost saving. And also there is no additional GHG emission from that location also. So I think this is it from my side, and happy to discuss with all of you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Praveer. So I'd now like to ask all the delegates here if they'd like to ask any questions. Both Ms. Shruti and Dr. Praveer are here. So would you have any questions for Ms. Shruti? Please raise your hands. We can start. Okay, let's get started. Akanksha, could you ask your question? Unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, so my question is from Shruti ma'am. Good morning, everyone. So, ma'am, first of all, it was very understandable, all the PPTs and all the slides. The only question I had was like, I couldn't stop thinking that what do you think has like the biggest hand behind like that now we need women reservation, and like is it the men's community who always suppress women's, or do you think it's the women itself who do not speak for themselves, or what it is? I'm just curious. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. So when we talk about gender equality, it's not about women coming ahead of men. It's about equal rights of all genders, right? So it's about everyone collectively thinking of how to bring the ones who are marginalized. For now, it is women. Women have not been recognized in a lot of these spaces. There have been men who have been instrumental in supporting some of these gender rights in the past. You have a lot of examples of that also, but also the fact that there are a lot of work that has been done by our grandmothers and our previous generation to actually be at a space where we are able to speak for ourselves and have that space right now. And it's still a long fight, but the fact that we even have reservations and all of those are from a lot of discussions for our right to be in a space that requires all of us collectively. This is where we talk about whole of society, right? It's not one gender over the other or one age over the other or different various like one caste over the other, one religion over the other. It's looking at everyone from an equal lens. And it requires all of us to take a collective stand on equal rights for everyone, irrespective of their caste, class, gender, or age. So it is a fight that it's not just that women have to do, but everyone have to be part of this for us to have an equal society in the future.
Okay, I'll take one question now from I'll have to pick you at random. I'm so sorry, we don't have all that much time. So a question from the Odisha delegation.
Good morning, ma'am. Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, go ahead.
Ma'am, we have two questions for each one of them, but ma'am, I would like to go first. Ma'am, dear Shruti ma'am.
Sorry, but only one question. We have to give others a chance as well. Okay, so select your question. Let us know who you want to ask the question to.
Okay, ma'am. So I would like Amrit Bhal to ask the question to Praveer sir.
Good morning, everyone. My question is to Praveer sir. My question is, what are the active risks and issues being faced while taking business and biodiversity conservation hand in hand?
Yeah. So there is if we're going in, hope I'm audible because I think I'm not able to open the screen, Zoom screen.
Yes, we can hear you,
Okay.
Dr. Praveer. Yes.
Yeah. So if we are doing both the things in hand, definitely there are less challenges or less risk. Let's take an example. What recently has happened that in a Great Indian Bustard, there is a regulation has come, and the companies has to go for underground transmission lines because they have not integrated that part in the decision making. So if that part they have integrated, they might have a financial availability to manage this risk. But suddenly, when the notification has come, and then they have to invest additional double costs in the going for underground transmission lines. Definitely, Supreme Court has done interventions, and then the specific areas has been identified. But again, if we are planning both the things in a much better way, the cost impact or the delays in the project will be much lesser. I think that is what we are trying to communicate with the business members, that how they can integrate both the aspect and then still they can continue with the sustainable operations if they are working in nearby protected areas or conserving for any species.
I'll take a question now from Samriddhi in Karnataka. So she says something both of the speakers shared was implementation of policies and changes in rights. From my understanding, a policy put in place needs to be accepted and followed by the community. What are your thoughts on this? So maybe Dr. Praveer, maybe you could take that first.
Yeah. So I think when the regulations come, I think everyone is 100% responsible for its implementation. So it might be through definitely the businesses has to do a much better part. But again, the product what we are using, is it coming for is it being sourced properly or not? Or when we are going out, are we properly disposing the plastic waste or whatever we are using it proper or not? So I think definitely everyone should play an important role because I think we can't say that it is responsibility of a business or it is responsibility of the recycling organizations. If we are not enabling that systems on our own, it may not be possible to achieve the desired target. And I think that's why the life mission, which is started by Ministry of Environment and Forest, where this actions is now going to an individual level where they're trying to create awareness that how individual can also change the trajectory and work on this aspect. So I think that is what my learning and that what I definitely try to integrate also as a part of when I'm working with businesses, that giving them a responsibility and ownership, that it is your ownership or to implement this policy, and again identifying ways to support them in a technical way and also in a scientific way how it can be managed properly.
Okay, thank you. Now, since we are running late and our next speaker is already here, so I'm so sorry, we'll have to wrap up the session, but we will share all the questions that the students have raised with each of you, and maybe, if we can collect the responses and share them later. Okay, so thank you very much for joining us, Ms. Shruti and Dr. Praveer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks all and best of luck.
Over to you, Avni.
Thank you so much, Shreya, for moderating that panel discussion. We will now welcome Mr. Ajulendra Reddy to take the next session on India and the Global Biodiversity Framework. Mr. Reddy is the chairperson of the National Biodiversity Authority, India. He has served as a secretary of the NBA for 5 years and has a distinguished career spanning over 3 decades. He has represented India at various international forums, including COP meetings of the CBD. He is an expert in international negotiations. He chaired national level committees and advisory groups, contributing significantly to biodiversity policy and law reform in India. Mr. Reddy was elected as the first Indian chair of the subsidiary body on the implementation to the CPD, highlighting his international recognition and leadership in biodiversity conservation. As a chair, he successfully concluded the SPI 4 of the CPD meeting held in 2004 at Nairobi, Kenya. I welcome you, sir. You may please proceed with your session.
Good morning, everyone. Am I audible, please?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
My dear young friends, good morning. Miss Neha Raghav, Miss Shruti Ajit, Miss Shreya Bhatt, Miss Sulagna Roy, and friends and all participants, very good morning. Namaste. The topic given to me is the India and the Global Biodiversity Framework. Friends, as since yesterday, this this MCOP 5 has been initiated, rather started yesterday, and most of the topics you might have been exposed to most of the concepts that are related to biodiversity. So it's nice that I thank all my learned speakers who spoke before me, making my role or my in this MCOP a little bit easy. And you might have got already a feel of all the concepts. But however, next slide, please. However, friends, what I would like to emphasize or stress is that if you catch the spirit of what I speak, that would be enough. It need not be word by word or slide by slide, sentence by sentence or something like that. These definitions of, for example, biodiversity and, mentioned the Biological Diversity Act and the CBD text, I'm just presenting before you. This is already shared with all of you. So you can go through it word by word, sentence by sentence. But I need not repeat all these things. But the learned speakers before me also explained about it. The only thing is that biological diversity, as far as, there are scientific definitions and also legal definitions. More or less, the scientific definition will be captured, but it has to be defined in legal terminology. Because in the courts of law, because now I am the chairperson of the National Biodiversity Authority. What is National Biodiversity Authority? It is an autonomous statutory body which deals with the statutory issues and implement the law governing the scientific concepts. So please try to catch what I am, saying with and sharing with you all. So the science governed by the law mainly, because what when somebody does, why we need Biological Diversity Act? For example, the biodiversity it is defined here. Some species, some plants, some microorganisms are taken away by somebody from multinational companies or some foreigners or some even Indians and get a patent and then earn a huge profit. But then from where they got the original bioresource? They got from somewhere in India, some village, some laboratory, something that they have not created. That means a public good has been converted into private good on which they only have the right to sell, right to do this thing. Patent means that one. So the act and the definitions and all the purpose of my speaking to you is that now we will explain the ABS mechanism in the slides, but I'm giving an introductory conceptual clarity. I'm trying to bring my introduction. So this is how the whole system functions in our country. Next. Yeah. Now, what is biodiversity? You know by this time, but why biodiversity is so important? We all know unknowingly, so far since last so many decades, now, we all realize the importance of biodiversity because we are making so many things out of biodiversity. In fact, more than 50% of global GDP is dependent on biodiversity. You see, nutrition, we get it. Biofuels from biodiversity. Pharmaceuticals, almost, even allopathic drugs, most 40% are derived from plants only. And microorganisms. Penicillin, from where they got? Penicillin is derived from the soil microorganism. Penicillin injection. So like that, so many cancer drugs are derived from the neem tree and many other plants, Taxus baccata and something like that, Vinca rosea. These are all the plants which gives cancer drugs. They are bulk biological resources are derived and molecules are extracted and the drugs are made out of it by pharma companies. L'Oreal company, what they make? Cosmetics. We regularly give no objection certificate for taking patents from the patent office. So these are all the things which are derived from the biodiversity, enzymes, food processing, bio-based polymers, human health. You might have heard about One Health policy. So all these things are related to biodiversity. Friends, what I wanted to say, initially mentioned that if you catch the spirit of my presentation, that is enough. The point I would like to highlight is that there are two burning issues now, climate change and biodiversity. Climate change and biodiversity are the two sides of the same coin. So without these two, these are two most important issues in our day-to-day life for next hundreds of years or whatever you may call it, for our own survival. I am repeating, for our own survival. Now, the point is that unless you live, you can't do any other thing. Whether you want to be a space technologist, whether you want to be a computer specialist, whether you want to be an artificial intelligence expert, or you want to be a car designer or a fashion designer or whatever you may call it. First, you have to lead a healthy life. For healthy life, biodiversity is essential. So therefore, friends, biodiversity is life. Biodiversity is our life. So please keep these things in mind. Then automatically you will be inclined to support biodiversity in whichever position you may be in future. Next. Now, just I would like to highlight what happened. Our national leaders, international leaders, they came together and they signed an agreement for giving birth to 3 conventions. One on climate change, one on desertification, combating desertification, and the other one is the biological diversity. So these are the 3 objectives: conservation, sustainable use of the components of the bio, and fair and equitable sharing of the benefits arising out of the utilization of the genetic resource. Now, the third one is very difficult to understand, also difficult to implement also. Now, do you have to catch here? You have to spend the time here. In Google, if you go, search for ABS, Access Benefit Sharing Mechanism, or ABS, you get plenty of literature to go through it. But if you have to understand the core element of the fair and equitable sharing of the benefits arising out of the utilization of genetic resource. Now, let me tell you a very simple example. If you have a plant, somebody takes that plant and takes out the molecule and develops a drug and sells in the market and earns 1 crore rupees. Now, from where you got the original bioresource? From certain village or certain street or certain university or something. So you have to give out of 1 crore some 5 lakhs or 2 lakhs or 1 lakh back to the place, means that particular place. Let us take a village. So that village, you have taken a neem. So we will encourage with that money to grow more neem trees in that village, so that the raw material is supplied to your company or to your drug manufacturing company without any problem, and that bioresource should not become extinct. That's what this third objective of the Convention on Biological Diversity captures. So if you understand this, that much is enough. I mean, this is how the whole system functions. Earlier days, for example, let us say that again I mentioned the neem tree, which is very common anywhere in India. You can see which is the nature's drugstore for the humankind in India. So if, for example, if somebody takes to, let us say, adjacent country, Pakistan or some Sri Lanka or something, it was never objected. But now they have to take permission. If they want to take for a commercial research, they need to take permission out of the country. And if they get a patent means that you have a rights, you will be given a rights for that invention. So they have to take our prior permission, so that we will take some portion out of the profits made plow back to that particular place from where you collected the original bioresource. This is a cycle. This has to be implemented. This is what I meant to say by the third objective. Thank you. Next slide. Huh? Achha, they have to. Oh, sorry. Okay. Now, let me tell you this global biodiversity framework. Now, internationally, I repeat, that we have come to a conclusion that, unless we have some targets, common targets for every country, we cannot achieve a significant progress in the conservation and sustainable utilization and fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising out of the utilization of the biological resources. So ultimately, we had earlier some Aichi biodiversity targets. I will not go into those things. From now thereafter, we have adopted this in December 2022. December 2022. At the Kunming Montreal Biodiversity Framework, actually they were adopted in the Montreal final. In two phases, this time because of the COVID, it was held also part 1 held in the China and part 2 in Canada, Montreal. So these are 23 targets. These 23 targets capture everything which is to be achieved by 2030. Thereafter, the goals have to be achieved by 2050. The objective is living in harmony with nature by 2050. These 23 targets are there under these headings. So I will not go into the details of these things. What are they and these things? You can easily read out of these things. But now already my predecessor has covered invasive alien species. He mentioned about that one, like that. This is under target 6 here in this thing. Next slide, please. And of course, target 12 in the past, previous one, also urban biodiversity. Now, urban, this summer, what happened? It has crossed 51 degrees centigrade in major cities, and there is certain, the power breakdown, and then people have come out on the streets because they could not sit in their homes without power. All these things are happening because the cities are becoming, urban heat effect. So we need to have certain vegetation to bring down the temperature at the micro level, at the immediate environment level. So these are the things which are required. So target 12 mentions about urban biodiversity. Now target 13, which I explained, accent benefit sharing, this covers what I explained just now. And target 19 is resource mobilization. Under resource mobilization, under the conventional biological diversity text, if you read it, the developed countries have to share some amount with the developing countries so that they will catch up in technology transfer as well as in conservation of biodiversity. And also, of course, all those things are there. Business and biodiversity nicely explained by Praveer Deshmukh ji just now before me. All these things are there here. So 23 targets are called Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And these 23 targets captures everything, whatever you want to implement or achieve. Next slide, please. Time. So India's National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan. Now, what does it mean? What is it? For what purpose this plan is to be prepared? Now, 23 targets cannot be achieved just like that. You cannot say, oh, we have 28 states, 8 union territories. Baba, you please implement these 23 targets. Then people will ask how? In what form? What is the strategy? What is the institutional framework? How to implement it? So for that, everything we need to have a plan. So we are under the preparation. I mean, earlier we have prepared it. Now, keeping in view the 23 targets which were adopted recently, we are preparing, is on final stages now. We are preparing, in the sense, updating the earlier plan in alignment with the global biodiversity framework. So this is how we are moving ahead. Next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. Now, this also was mentioned previously, I think yesterday also, today also. I will not go into the details. This is target by 30 by 30, means 30% of the whole world area, including terrestrial, water, inland, terrestrial. We have to protect all countries. This is a global target. This is colloquially called as 13 to 13, means 30% of the global surface area, including the terrestrial water, and by 2030. So this is the meaning of this slide. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is just to show you how India's contribution to forest and the act and the area under different this thing. Just we are projecting it. You can. This is for your reference. And only thing I would like to highlight here is the biological heritage sites. Under Biological Diversity Act, we have different concepts in conservation. One is a sanctuary, national park, community reserve, conservation reserve. Now this biodiversity heritage site under the Biological Diversity Act. This is the next concept. Next, please. 2 minutes, I can pass now. 2 minutes. Next slide, please. Next, yeah. See, we have institutional framework. I told you that how the NEEM example I have given, but there are 3 institutions, village level biodiversity management committee, at state level Union Territory Biodiversity Council called, and it is nothing but a state biodiversity board, at the national level NBA, to which I am heading now. These are how the whole framework is implemented by these 3 organizations. Next slide, please. Yeah, just I would like to give an example. This is a patent number so-and-so, derived from Haritaki, turmeric, and boswellia. The company made some profits by getting a patent. There I mentioned, I will not go into the details because of shortage of time. The Lila Nutraceuticals is a company. Now they paid us the 1,45,000 rupees for commercializing it. Now this 1,45,000 we will plow it back to grow Boswellia serrata, Terminalia chavula, and wherever they have collected these samples or these bioresources. This is how the whole access benefit sharing mechanism will work or will be operationalized on ground. This is just an example to you. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This I'll not go into the details. This is just simple. This grass is grown everywhere now in our pots, in every urban and in our flats and houses. So this is another patent under process, just to show you that even a grass will derive, give you a lot of these products which are essential oils and drugs and so on. Next is next slide, please. Yeah, just we wanted to show you mission life. There are 4, 63, 64, 65, 68. These are the action points in the mission life which are relevant to biodiversity. Next slide, please. This is our major activities. You can go through it. I need not explain about this slide. Next slide, please. Just I wanted to sensitize you how food loss and waste happens. This is from Economic Times, and recently on 3rd July it was published. I took it for your sake, just to sensitize all the young friends that we should not waste food and how it is being wasted. In whichever position you may be, you can contribute in reducing the food wastage. I gave this right side, food waste in India, how it is being done. It is a very pathetic scenario. In simple words, 50 kg per person, we are wasting it. And this is very, very, very important for us to, for leading a sustainable life. We have to consumption and wastage, we have to reduce it and manage it sustainably. Next slide, please. Just it is an International Day for Celebrity. We recently celebrated, just to showing it in Andhra Pradesh, Vizag. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. What Swami Vivekananda's concept of nature was of respect and reverence for the earth and for all that exists there. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to WWF and friends for sharing my thoughts on this biodiversity framework. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. We have a few questions that the students are asking, and we'd like for you to answer. We'll have the first question by the Chhattisgarh delegation. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Good morning, everyone present. My question is that things like highways, big buildings, and building roads, they're nowadays called as development. But then while we are constructing all these things, we cause a lot of environmental damage, like severe damage to the environment and the biodiversity. In Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh itself, there are many forests which have been cleared because of making factories, making highways, making different buildings. And what are your views on that? And how do you think we can develop hand in hand with the biodiversity and the environment? Thank you, ma'am.
Should I respond, please? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Please.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. What is your good name, please?
So my name is Vamika Jain.
Jain, Vanika Jain. Bhamika Jain. Okay, thank you. Yeah, you are right. Your observation is, really, you are keen observer, it seems that, but the point let us take into consideration. Now, let us see how hunter-gatherers have become agriculturists 10,000 years back. You have to read one book, written by the Israeli great, Yuval Noah Harari. He wrote on the human Homo sapiens. The title of this thing. You can get this wonderful book. Every one of you who are sitting here should read it. How we have developed, what is the science, how we developed, how hunter-gatherers, and what is the difference between the first thing that happened was agriculture. Then that happened was industrialization. Now we are entering into fourth phase of industrialization. Industrialization 4. So now, friends, the point is that you cannot, you stop this suddenly, this development process. For example, you need cars to travel, you need roads to this thing. You have a 1.4 billion population. We are number 1 in the world. Now, how to live all this, how to accommodate, everyone needs some house to this thing, everyone needs water, everyone needs transport, everyone needs education. So these are the new concepts, and civilized, whatever you may say, you may find many disadvantages. But at the same time, you have to keep it in mind, environment and biodiversity in a balanced way. For example, you want a highway from Bombay to some other city or Delhi to some other city. You can't say that, no, we'll have only single lane. Then there will be huge accidents and many things. Nothing will work out. But at the same time, when you are expanding the road, you should have an inbuilt system in the estimate that you are cutting 100 trees. You have to plant 2 rows of plants, which are 300 trees should be there. There we are failing. The point I'm trying to do, there we are failing. That is where you have to insist. For example, tomorrow you will become an engineer and you join the civil engineer, National Highway Authority of India. Now your power is with you. Then you implement, even if it is after 6, 7, 8 years from now onwards, you keep it in mind that once I become an engineer in National Highway Authority of India, I will insist and I will make that planting of trees which along the sides of the national highway is a must. Then you have power to implement it. That is what students are forgetting. Whereas they get jobs, they are having cozy jobs, they purchase one good car, they enjoy, they marry, and this thing about they forget about biodiversity. In your day-to-day profession, taking action again, in deterring the climate change and improving the biodiversity in whichever role you may be, whether you are a teacher, whether you are a doctor, whether you are an engineer, whether you are a civil servant, whether you are just a social activist, you can do wonders. The point is that there we are not doing our job, our responsibility. That's what Life Mission says, Honorable Prime Minister, which he has forcibly saying again and again, that we have to perform our roles. And food wastage. These are the things just I would like to mention, but you cannot avoid these flats. You cannot avoid development. In the flats also nowadays, you have to have bigger porticos or outside these things for having some plants which can meet your kitchen requirements. Small shrubs, small herbs, all these things can be grown there. This is what you have to practice after completing your studies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We have the next question by Vishnu Tanuj.
Respected sir, being a chairman of the National Biodiversity Authority, can you share us about the challenges you faced in the implementation of biodiversity laws or conventions?
Yes, very good question, Vishnu. The issue here is that all are not on the same page. For example, I am heading the national organization. Now, there is a need for, we say SEPA. SEPA means communication, education, public awareness. Okay, this is one of the main things in our biodiversity outreach strategies. The state biodiversity boards, we all are organizing International Day for Biodiversity. But before organizing International Day for Biodiversity, we are repeatedly requesting the state biodiversity boards to spread out to the schools and make experts, teachers who are botany, zoology, or biodiversity related this thing to give a special day, special lectures, and conduct a essay competitions, painting competitions, and so that everybody, this goes into into our total mental framework. That is one thing. The second is that at a higher level, The implementation of Biological Diversity Act, if they understand, all of us understand and study deeply, it is not that difficult. But sometimes we are sending wrong signals to companies and others by not taking action stepwise manner. Either we are very, suddenly we take very strict and suddenly completely we have to be, relaxed way. It should not be like that. You have to completely, in a consistent manner, you have to engage with the stakeholders. Okay. That means stakeholders, who are there? There are tribals, there are organic farmers, there are industries, there are companies which are, causing harm to, or sometimes indirectly by pollution causing harm to biodiversity. And sustainable utilization. Sustainable means if there are 100 shrubs or 100 trees, don't cut everything and get profit in a day. You are killing a duck which gives a golden egg every day. So sustainable use is the principle which has to be understood. So these limitations on understanding of implementation of Biological Diversity Act across country, there are certain places which are nicely implementing. There are certain places which don't even understand the basics of implementation of the act. So we are trying our best to giving a massive training programs. This is how we have to achieve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We'll take one more question by Mopi Remo from Arunachal. Please go ahead.
Good morning, sir. Myself, Mopi Remo from Arunachal Pradesh. So, sir, as you said, biodiversity also play a role in country's GDP. So my question to you is, what is the relationship between biodiversity loss and economic growth as measured by GDP?
See, you all know GDP means the value of the services, products grown in a country. Simple terms, I'm telling you. In fact, I belong to Union Territory cadre. I was once in Arunachal Pradesh at Sejusa. You know, Sejusa is on the wonderful place, Pakke Tiger Reserve. Now I served here about 1992-93. That beautiful environment, I was there. So I am greatly attached to Arunachal Pradesh, and I am delighted to see you representing Arunachal Pradesh. So Arunachal Pradesh is a blessed state. It is having the maximum biodiversity in the country, and I wish that they sustainably utilize the bioresources of the Arunachal Pradesh. Now let me quote one example: the economy and the biodiversity. In Sejusa itself, after my joining there, we started eco-development committees and eco-tourism. Eco-tourism in the sense of giving local people training in how to interpret the nature. The urbanites come from cities and this thing. It's a beautiful place. Sejusa and Pakke Tiger Reserve is one of the best places in the, I can say, not only in India, but in the world. So nature, instead of just, you have to show your hornbill. How you have to change the hornbill, once upon a time hornbill used to be hunted. Now in place of that hornbill beak, you changed it into a plastic, similar looking one. There's no difference at all. So you saved that bird from, being hunted indiscriminately. So you have to tell the stories to this thing. You have to tell the stories between the butterflies available. If you go into bird watching, it's a heaven for a bird watching. Bird watcher's paradise. So you have to show. So what I mean to say, your economy of that particular village in Sejusa will improve just by not cutting the trees and not cutting, but by showing and interpreting the nature. And one more example I would like to give: in Bomdila area in your state and other places, the Taxus baccata is there. Taxus baccata is highly, ruthlessly harvested without. So local people, local forest officers should join together, the biodiversity management committees, local panchayat. They should harvest sustainably. They should not cut the tree at the base. They should cut only branches and leave certain branches. This is called scientific harvesting. These are simple to say, but difficult to practice in the field. So these things have to be imbibed by, persons like you. Once you become, you will enter into graduation, you are in a particular place, you can educate your friends and relatives. We should not extend taxes, baccata, completely cut the trees. Otherwise, we will lose our economy, will be in trouble. So this is how you have to operate the simple principles into practical examples. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, we'll take one last question from Sanvi from Maharashtra.
So my question to you is, even though while making highways and roads, we cut a lot of trees, and say the government says that we will plant, say if we cut 100 trees, we plant 200 more. So for one time, we can plant those trees. But who will take care of those trees? And also, the trees that are cut, they have historical value to the area. How are you going to get that historical element back?
Can you repeat the last point? I could not hear. There is some disturbance. I could not hear the last part of your question. Please, can you repeat? There is some problem in the.
So what I'm trying to say is.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is, even though we cut trees, we are not able to maintain the new ones we plant. And even though if we are, the historical element of the trees that have been cut, we are not able to restore it.
Restore. She's telling restore.
Yes, sir. The historical element we are unable to restore.
Okay.
Cut it and we replenish it.
Yeah. No, my friend, young friend, I am really very nice this thing. But the point I'm trying to tell you is that you see, now we have brought out a new principle that don't plant anywhere. I mean, to the extent possible, because we have a huge cattle population, huge human population. You know, if you go to foreign countries, you will rarely find a human being on the road or anywhere. If you want to see also, nobody can see. You know. But in India, if you go just outside your house or anywhere in the, you see hundreds of people. This is our current things. If you go to rural side along the highways, you will see hundreds of cattle crossing and this is the fact. So every country has its own, whatever you may say, its own difficulties, challenges. Now, the point I would like to tell you is that never plant a tree which is less than 5 feet height. In the sense that it will be beyond the reach of the cattle population, goat or sheep or whatever you may say. So that is one principle you can ensure maximum survival. Okay, that is how one should do. And one more thing, just now I mentioned with our young friend, I told that if you become civil engineer. See, the problem is that environment and biodiversity is everyone's responsibility. It is not one forest department responsibility or agriculture department responsibility. It is not like that. It is a common thing because everyone is eating every day biodiversity only, biological resources only to survive. So everybody in the profession should see that you have mentioned that maintenance, 4 years you have to maintain a plant. Then only it will become a tree. You cannot cut corners. No. My expenditure in the project is increasing. No, it is not like that. It gives oxygen. It saves soil from erosion. It reduces temperature. All these things have to be considered in your estimate. That is not happening. I'm repeating. That is not happening. So that's why we have to be sensitive when we occupy positions, whether in a private sector, you are in a L&T company, is a big construction company. They should have some botanists, some forest officers, somebody biodiversity experts, so that they can also side by side helping them in the restoring or revitalizing or propagating the biodiversity. So this is how we have to proceed from all professions. It cannot be one single department, Delhi Forest Department can say, no, it can never happen. So this is my answer to you. I hope I answered your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I would like to invite Neha ma'am now.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Reddy, for such an enlightening session. And I'd especially like to thank you for supporting the Model Conference of Parties for past 2 years. It's been absolutely amazing working with you, listening to you, and learning from you. So thank you so much for today's session, for highlighting the importance of biodiversity and the efforts made by India to conserve biodiversity. And thank you so much for sharing the India's biodiversity strategy and action plan with students. And I'm sure they will all go back super excited, wanting to share all their learnings with their parents, with their schoolmates and everybody. So thank you so much once again, Mr. Reddy, and I hope you could join us for the finale on 12th. But yeah, we got to know that you have a very busy schedule. But thank you so much for this session. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Neha. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being so attentive during the session. We have a very fun activity now before we move on to the next one. So We've all played the activity called Odd One Out. What we have here is very similar to that. We'll display a set of images on the screen, and you have to pick the one that does not belong to the group as quickly as possible. All the images are numbered, so you need to put your answer in the chat box. Can we have the first slide, please? So which of these stands out? Which of these does not belong to this particular group? Okay, I see 1, 6, 3. Okay. Lots of 1s, 6s, and 3s. So can we have the answer, please? It's 6, yes. So all the other species displayed are in red color, but one plant, the Indian laburnum, is yellow. Do you know, can somebody tell me why some animals are red in color? What is that pigment that gives them red color? The diet. Yes, exactly. So many bird feathers are red colored, ladybugs, beetles, even plants have red color. Exactly. Can we have the next one? This was very simple. Now this is a little tricky. And this one has 2 correct answers. So can you tell me which one does not belong here? I see 3. Somebody says 7 and 9. Lots of 3s. Okay. Okay. Somebody says 1 and 3. All right. Can we have the answer, please? So the answers are 1 and 3. And now, can somebody tell me what the theme for this slide is? Why 1 and 3? Both are flightless birds. Exactly. You got them right. Kakapo is from New Zealand. It is only found in New Zealand. And the other one is penguin. Both of these birds cannot fly while the rest can. Now, can you tell me one of these birds that are depicted here is the state bird of Uttarakhand? Can you identify it? Nine, exactly. The Himalayan monal is the state bird of Uttarakhand. And the state bird of Rajasthan, if somebody can identify for me. 7. Not 7, not 6. The answer is 8. That is the great Indian bustard. That is the state bird of Rajasthan. Now we have the final round of odd one out. So there are 2 correct answers again. Please identify them for me. 4. Okay. Somebody says 2 and 6. 2 and 4. Okay, can we have the answers, please? So the correct answer is 4 and 7. Can anybody tell me what the theme for this particular slide is? Why are these 2 odd ones? Right. Right. Okay. Okay. So the theme for this particular slide, some of you have guessed it correctly. The rest of them are fish, but 4 and 7 are not fish. Although they're found in the ocean, but they are not fish. Can anyone tell me which of these species displayed on the slide is an invasive species? We learned about invasive species yesterday during Vishesh ma'am's session. 8. Yes, it's called the lionfish. Do you see any invasive species around you? Any animal or any plant? Us, we are invasive species, right? Lionfish, okay. Right, so people have named very correctly. I see lantana, locust maybe. Okay, correct, correct. Thank you so much for being very quick with your responses. Now that you are all pepped up, let's have the next session. For our next session, what makes a conservation success story? We have 2 inspiring heroes who will take you along their conservation journeys. Ms. Neha Raghav will be moderating the session, and I would like to introduce the guest speakers before moving on. So Dr. Purnima Devi Burman is a wildlife biologist in Aranya in Assam and has been working to protect the endangered greater adjutant stork, like it was mentioned during today's session by Shruti. And Purnima ma'am was the recipient of the Whitley Award, which is also called the Green Oscar, for this crusading conservation movement. She has also been honored with the Nari Shakti Puraskar, which is the highest civilian award for women, and it is conferred by the President of India. The next speaker is Vinod Malayalethu, who has an experience of 27 years in seafood processing industry, shrimp aquaculture, and conservation of marine resources. He's an associate director for marine conservation programs at WWF India and is primarily on working on community-based fisheries program. Neha ma'am, I would like for you to please take it forward.
Thank you so much, Avni. Hello, delegates, once again. And you have received a lot of information that you have to absorb. I'm sure you would all want to go back and recap. I'm sure you're all making notes, and some of the interesting things that you have learned, you would like to go back and learn a little bit more, explore a little bit more. Now, this is the time to actually get inspired. And I'm going to share a few inspiring biodiversity conservation stories. As you all know, that WWF India's logo is what? Can someone share in the chat? What is WWF India's logo? Which animal do you see? Which panda is it? Is it red panda? It is the giant panda. And do you all know that at one point of time, the giant panda was endangered, especially when it was identified as the logo of the organization? It was endangered. Thankfully, by the efforts of conservation efforts of the countries and the organizations across the world, the good news is that the giant panda is not endangered anymore. And it was the great conservation efforts, of various countries, especially in China. The Wolong National Nature Reserve is actually dedicated to the conservation of this species. Similarly, there are a few other stories that you might like to explore a little bit more. Is the story of the California condor, and the population was increased from just 22 birds to over 500, which highlights the success of the collaborative conservation effort. You may be also interested in exploring a little bit more about the mountain gorilla conservation program, where this majestic animal, the numbers had really plummeted, and now it's exceeding 1,000 individuals. So there are many such stories that demonstrate the power of conservation efforts and inspire continued action to protect our planet's precious biodiversity. So as you would all have realized, that India is a signatory to several major international conventions relating to conservation and management of wildlife, and has made as a nation, we have made significant strides and efforts to conserve the biodiversity. And it's not just the government, but communities, individuals, organizations, and institutions. They have all come together and contributed their might to achieve the goals and targets set at the national stage. We have two such beautiful examples and stories to share with our young delegates today. I would at the first like to invite my dear friend, Dr. Purnima Devi Burman, who is an eminent conservationist, as such an inspiring individual, to share her story of mettle and grit to protect the endangered greater adjutant stork, the Hargilla. Over to you, Dr. Purnima.
At first, thank you so much, Ms. Neha Raghav, for inviting me here. I'm really honored and to see all the bright eyes. Although it is online, I can see the optimism. And thank you so much, actually, WWF India and Ms. Neha Raghav for this initiative. I'm really mesmerized. And yeah, I would love to join every year. It's really, yeah, so that's the spirit. Yeah, I'm so happy and honored. So thank you. So I'd like to share my screen so as you advised to make a presentation. So I have a few slides. I'll share a few slides only here. So can you please help me? Is it is it visible? You can see,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Yeah.
It
Yes,
is
ma'am.
visible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. And I can see Avni also. Yeah, it's great to see. And all my young friends, Namaskar from Assam and from Hargila land, the land of Hargila, from the village of Hargila. And you can see all my young friends, you can see the babies, right? How do you feel when you see the babies of Hargila? This is the bird which we are working, saving this bird from extinction with support from communities. And you can see the baby birds, and it's on the nest, and they might have from 2 to 4 babies. They lay up to 4 eggs, and at a very height, it's a kadam tree. It's a tall tree. They have different types of trees, and they are breeding here. And I'm sure all of you love these babies. And that's why we have to save the birds, save the animals. If when you see the babies, when you say they see their family, so it reminds our family. So it's our responsibility and how we are connected to them. So again, when I saw this picture, you saw the adult Hargila, but you can see them more prominently. How how beautiful, how charismatic this bird is. They have a gular pouch like a bag, dangling inflatable gular pouch, and they look like a human being in size, like my size. You all can relate them with your own height. So and they are scavenger birds. You can see them, and can you believe people also treated them as as ugly bird, even some ornithologists. And I want to challenge that how someone can treat them as ugly bird. And not only these birds but many other species. So people who have that negative perceptions, my friends, I request all of you to come forward and give your voice, give your optimism to to eliminate that from our society, right? And when I started my work, the birds I found them often they were poisoned, persecuted, or treated as bad omen or disease carrier. Whether they are our nature's cleaning crews. I'll come to that. So and the trees, when the Hargila birds go and breed on the tall trees, the trees were cut down, and you can see like how the families destroyed. And this was the trade, biggest trade, and they breed in the private lands. That is also one of the biggest problem. So this way they don't enjoy, or they don't get that government like protection, because because the trees are the properties of the people. And our communities have to be the government directly, or the authority. I always say this in a simple language. And yes, I would come again. They are our nature's cleaning crews. You might have questions why Hargila is important. Like vultures, they have a major role in our ecosystem. They are our scavenger birds. And to I encountered, I found this problem when I started my works 17 years back. So it was very stressful, but I found optimism, and and a way, and yeah, so and a mission to live my life for Hargila. And I started collaborating with communities to save this bird. And you can see many women. So suddenly we formed a women's movement, a women's group called Hargila Army. From a small band, we formed a very huge band now, and now we have more than 10,000 women from villages as Hargila Army. And it's, trust me, my friends, it's very huge. And so yeah, they are our Hargila Army. We have our headdress. When you start your own initiative, you can always use your innovation, creativity. You can see how we use this headdress and all. So these are our Hargila Army. So yeah, we always try to integrate. Yeah, these are our Hargila headdress. I share this because I think my young friends would love this. And you can make, and you can please send us this kind of efforts, which will be very helpful for us. And you can keep it with you also. Yeah, so we started integrating our conservation with our culture, our tradition. We started organizing cooking festivals, cooking competitions, and this way we attracted our communities, our women, and then these are the wave of life you can also play. I think you know. So how we all are connected, and through wedding songs or through our Assamese traditional prayers, we also have our community Gita Bhagavat procession, where also we integrate Hargila conservation. So by linking this with culture, we celebrate the Hargila, and this impacts a lot. We also have baby shower for Hargila, like the way we do for our Assamese expectant mothers. So I think our communities, so they get emotionally sensitized, and Hargila become a part of our tradition and culture. You can see this is our Assamese gamosa or Assamese mekhela sadras that I am also wearing myself. And these are the way, like how this, you can see the transformation, how this bird was treated as bad omen. But once the communities are aware, and when they become the leaders, and when they become the key stakeholders, they are now protecting the birds, and we have more than 10,000 women and their families as the protectors of this species. And so these are the dresses which are also in the museum, like now in Netherlands Museum, and recently it's in the Natural History Museum. And it is the celebration of our communities. Our women, our communities feel so proud when their efforts are being recognized like this. So we also do lots of programs with the young friends like you, because you are the leaders, you are the creators. And we have our Hargila Learning Center in the village. You can join us sometimes. I request Nehaji also and Abni and everyone to join us, and we can work together. So we work a lot with children. We do such initiatives, and you can also be a part of this. So for example, it's a girl Dia, how Dia is saving a stork. So we make comics out of them, and then we celebrate there, and our communities really connect and love them. So it's a long story, and I'm just briefing up. And we do lots of rescues. We put nets under the nesting trees, and the baby birds fall down, and we rescue the birds and release them in the wild. So these are the protection mechanism. And we do it with the help of, with the support of Forest Department. We are very grateful to them. We work with Kamrup District Administration, Kamrup Police. And this is my bamboo platform, nest platform to study the breeding birds. It is about 100 feet. I have 3 bamboo platforms. And on the other side, you can see these are the nest platforms. These are artificial nest platforms we do are experimentally, and these are successful. So just I wanted to share, and the story is really rewarding. Our efforts, like our tree owners, our communities, they now the Hargila is now part of their. It's like their children. It's like their daughters. It's like their children, and they always celebrate. And Hargila is a part of their every ritual or every traditional function. And our Hargila army, they feel like it's a band, it's a brand, and it's just a connection, and it's just a coexistence. And until and unless you don't come and see, you won't realize. So please come and see and meet our Hargila army. And with this effort, earlier in these villages, we had only 27 nays, and now we have more than 250 nays, which have expanded to Assam, and we have now around 400 nays in entire Assam. And again, coming to the population in entire journey of 17 years, I want to share the population, like from around 450 to 500 birds in 2007. Now the birds population in Assam is around 1800 birds. And so the population also increased. So, and everything is also, everything is possible only because of the community support. When communities come forward, the magic happens, and especially when the women come forward from the village, the magic happens. And also I would like to appeal or add here, when young friends like you who come forward, then the real magic happens. So with this, I would like to conclude, and let's increase our team for biodiversity, for Hargila and many other species together, and we can be unstoppable, and we can inspire the world together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Purnima. The moment you said that people find this bird ugly, I started to see messages pouring in saying that what a beautiful bird, what a magnificent bird. So I think so the children are able to see this beautiful bird in a different light, and they feel, and you have been so inspiring for all of them today. I know that you have a very tight schedule and you have to travel. I'll take just 2 questions from the students, and then they can just paste the questions in the chat box. So students, because of lack of time, we will be able to take only 2 questions. So please raise your hand. I have Pragun Jain. You can please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am. Your
Good
story was
afternoon.
really motivating for us and inspiring for us. And I wanted to ask, because as you mentioned that many people saw this bird as ugly and demotivated you. So how did you overcome this demotivation and convert it into a success as big as this? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pragun. Yeah, I'm very happy for your question. Thank you. So at first, before addressing your question, I would like to say something with Neha ji, because I think it'll be answer for everyone. So as she said about the bird was treated as ugly, and when you reacted, how beautiful and mesmerizing the bird is. Yes. So I'm so happy to hear, and I can show, if you can see me carefully, you can see the earring of the Hargila birds. It's so beautiful, right? And we always keep talking that our passion becomes fashion. So I think that message I want to give, and you can see the Hargila birds. These are so beautiful, which I always want to carry with me wherever I go. I'm going to Tezpur, Balipara for a community campaign happening tomorrow. And so, yeah, I always carry this message. And yes, now coming to Pragun. So it was all the time, it was, and being a woman, and I was at that time, I was a new mother, my twin babies, they were very young, 2.5 years old. And when I saw this baby bird fell down, one person cut down the tree and the baby birds fell down. I was a new mother, and this motherly instinct fired up, and they told that this bird is a bad omen, disease carrier. And I found that these are like my daughters, my babies, and how can someone tell them as a bad omen? I think that was the motherly instinct. And whatever challenges I found, so I think a mother will always defend, right? So yeah, every day people, I had lots of challenges wherever I went, but I realized that we have to do it became, I became more obsessed with the bird, and it became more challenging that this bird should be a part of our tradition and culture. And to achieve this goal, I only knew, I didn't have any resource, but to achieve this goal, to bring this bird into our hearts, tradition and culture, I knew that I have to be restless. This should be done every day. I have to go every day there, and with this only, yeah, I have been doing this till now, and every day, I think, until my last breath. So I think you got your answer, right? Thank you so much. And what is the next question, please?
Yeah, the next question, I will invite Simran from Karnataka to ask a question.
Good morning, ma'am. Your talk was very inspiring. Your story was very inspiring.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. My question is, so I think with the birds, especially with creating the artificial bamboo platforms and nests, do they really need that much human intervention? Don't they already have a way that they operate on their own instincts,
Yeah.
their own behaviors? How is that also included?
Yeah. So Simran, it's a very nice question because it was a short time, so I didn't mention everything. Yeah. So see, we always try for the natural breeding, and it is just an experiment. In 2017, we did with we did these nest platforms, and because there was a storm, and so for these natural calamities, so a few trees where there were lots of birds nesting, a few trees they fell down due to storms, and and I always read about these nest platforms for the storks in Europe, in many countries in Europe, but they have lots of resources. And when these trees fell down, I think seven nesting trees fell down due to storm, and it was a very challenging, like we have done so much, and then again it will affect the breeding, and then this solution came, and then we started this nest platform, and successfully fortunately this was successful. But again, what we found, that there were some other trees, so birds have started choosing new trees also, and then our problems also solved. But at the same time, when we did this nest platform, we raised 7 chicks to the wild, and because it is endangered, and so it is always advisable when it is endangered, and we did this with the suggestion and with the support of some experts all over the world. Yeah. Very nice questions and all. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Purnima, for taking those questions. Despite a very busy schedule, you made it for today's session. Thank you so much for your time and for your presentation.
Thank you so much. We'll meet again. Bye.
Sure.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
I leave now. Okay,
Yeah.
bye. Thank you. Please allow me to leave. Thank you so much.
Sure. Next, I will invite my colleague, Mr. Vinod Malayathu, to talk about one of WWF India's conservation efforts by setting up the short neck clam fishery at Ashtamudi estuary. So over to you, Vinod, now.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, Neha. Is it audible?
It is audible. Yes,
Yeah.
you
Okay.
can go
Thank you.
ahead.
Yeah. So thanks, Neha, for the introduction. So seeing all these kids, it takes me back to my school days where I also used to attend meetings, not like this. So now it is like a virtual forum. So there we used to have it physically. Okay, and what resonated with me was the NBA person's last statement saying that environment and biodiversity is everyone's responsibility, and that is, even though it's a simple statement, it has got a great meaning. Okay, great. So now we dive into something like from terrestrial to ocean. So I think all of you can just raise your hand or just give a thumbs up on how many of you are inspired by the ocean. Great, great. Oh, that is a great response. Okay. So right now, I will just do a brief. I don't want to be too technical. So, and I also prefer it to be, what you say, participatory. So it won't, I promise you that it won't be like a boring presentation. And have you heard, I think most of you might have heard about eco-labeling, right? Okay, so eco-labeling is basically a product that is proven to be environmentally preferable and which is also sustainably harvested. Hello?
Yes, sir, we can hear you now.
Yeah, sorry. I think there was a power outage. Sorry for that. Okay, so I don't know whether you heard my question. So have anybody of you heard about eco-labeling in fish? You might have heard about ISO certification, ISI. So anyone has heard about eco-labeling in fish? Just raise your hand or give a thumbs up for me just to know if anybody has heard about eco-labeling in fish. Okay, that is fine. So I will just explain in very simple terms what is, okay, great. There is a raise of hand, great. So I will just very simply explain. Can you hear me still? Okay, sorry.
Yes, yes, Vinod, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Neha, there's a power outrage here 2 times, so sorry for that.
No,
Okay,
no, that is fine.
okay, so I'll very briefly explain what is eco-labeling. So before I come to eco-labeling, I think most of you, since you are inspired by the ocean, might have seen the animal, a bivalve, right? A clam. And most of you who are residing in the coastal area or who has gone to the beach might have seen this animal called clam. It is a bivalve. And why it is called a bivalve? Because it has got two valves and which is hinged. And this bivalve has got a lot of properties. So here what you see in this slide is a cross-section of a clam. So I think most of you might have learned, or I don't know whether you have learned in your classes, how the clam feeds. So when you closely observe a clam, when you irritate it, it doesn't move. You think that it is dead or it's just stationary. But if you very closely observe without disturbing it, slowly it will put out its two siphons. So that is what you see here. You can see my pointer, right? So here you have these siphons. So through one siphon, it takes in the water, and that is the arrow that you see here. And these are the gill rakers. And the gill rakers are basically used for absorbing and filtering whatever is there in the water. So the water that it takes in also has food. And you might have also seen when you go to any water body, the color of the water indicates what type of zooplankton or phytoplankton it has. So here, this is mainly a phytoplankton feeder. So whatever organic material is also there in the water get absorbed by the body and is also filtered by the gills, and they throw out the water. So I think if you are very curious, you can also try this at home. Just take a bucket of water, which is slushy, and then put a few clams in that. Within 1 or 2 hours, it will become very clear. That means your water has been filtered. So what does that mean? So basically, this clam can be used as a biofilter. We have so many external filters, things like that, but this can be used as a biofilter when it is a very large water body. So here what we have found is this particular clam which resides in the estuary called Ashtamudi, which is in Kerala. So I have just like for your information, I have just put the topographic details, like where is it found, what is the area of that particular estuary, and it is also a Ramsar site. So Ramsar site, I think most of you might be aware of. It is a Ramsar site because of its biodiversity importance. And this is the second largest wetland in Kerala, the first being Vembanad. And this particular clam, 80% of the overall clam trade, clam export happens with this clam. And this clam is present in this particular estuary and also an estuary in Karnataka. So the person who's from Karnataka also may be knowing about the Kali estuary, which is near to Karwar. So this clam is also available there. And as I said, since it is a biofilter, if the biomass means the total quantity of the clam is good, then it can filter the whole water body in like 139 days. That is what we found out through our experiments. And if the biomass is low, that means if there is overexploitation or if the smaller ones, juveniles, all are exploited, it takes double the time and approximately around 277 days to the water to be filtered. So basically, the biomass of this particular clam is important for the estuary, not only to act as a biofilter, but it also is a livelihood for around 3,000 local people residing on the banks of the estuary. Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, so let us now come to eco-labeling. I think most of you might be aware of the ISO certification and all that, which are done as a part of quality. So here, basically, this certification conveys that this particular animal is sustainably harvested and it is a globally recognized certification scheme. And you might also be thinking why it is globally recognized. Our seafood, and we are like one among the 6 biggest seafood exporters in the world, and we are also a producer, not a consumer. So for a producer, it is very important to be globally recognized because our export has to go to another country, and the country has certain standards, and according to the standards, we will have to comply for the specific country to import. And it is also very difficult to get eco-labeling for a product from a developing country or from a tropical country because it has a lot of constraints. So here you use a lot of nets for fishing. There are n number of boats which are over the carrying capacity. So all that has to be taken into consideration when we go into certification. And basically, the MSC, which is the Marine Stewardship Council, which is based out of UK, is a globally recognized certification body which certifies the seafood that is produced from capture, not culture capture, that which is caught using net from the sea. And this also complies with the FAO's Code of Conduct for Responsible Fisheries, that is the CCRF. And it is also a very science-based standard. I am not going into the details of the standard because it's a little technical, but I will very briefly say what are the basic principles for eco-labeling. Yeah, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is basically a logo which goes with the product if it is eco-label. I will come to this later. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So basically, there are 3 principles in eco-labeling. So this is applicable to anything. It is not only applicable to seafood, it is applicable to anything that grows on the land or the sea. So one is the resource has to be available in plenty, or it has to be sustained if it has to support a livelihood. So that is the first principle. So the thing is, the product or the animal has to be there. And the second is when you extract or when you catch this particular animal from the environment, or when you harvest it from the environment, it should not be destructive to the environment. So that is basically the second principle. And the third principle is, anyway, you have management, rules, regulation, laws. So it has to comply with these rules, regulation, and laws. I think I said it in a very simple term. And each principle has got around 20 performance indicators against which the particular fishery that moves into certification is assessed. And there is a scoring given. So if there is a score of 80 plus, that means that particular fish or even the fish product, it is certified. That means it is harvested in a sustainable manner. And there is a scoring called 60. And if you have a 60 plus, there are conditions, but the conditions have to be met within a specific period to get it certified. Next slide, please. Yeah, so here the animal which we tried to certify was the clam. So in my opening slide, you saw what is a clam. So this clam is called the short neck clam, and the scientific name of this clam is Paphia malabarica, which is present in this particular estuary, which is Ashtamudi, and also in Karnataka and Kali estuary. So here, this is the only clam that is exported. The rest of the clams are mostly domestically consumed. Here also it is domestically consumed, but this is the only clam that is being exported. And here in the picture, what you see is there are 2 ways of exploiting or harvesting it from the estuary. So one is here, you see, these are using hand rakers. So there are 2 people who have this net, which is lowered into the estuary, and this fishing normally happens during the low tide. And then they rake it. And once they rake, so this particular net has a lot of clams. So once they rake, the smaller ones will be filtered, and you get only the bigger ones. And during the certification, we have also specified what should be the mesh size of this net when it is raked. And here what you see, this is the most sustainable way of harvest, which is, and the fisherman goes under the water and he picks only the big ones. He doesn't pick the small ones. And here, what you see, this man, we have used him basically as an ambassador when he was certified. So he is holding the clams in his hand. Yeah, next slide, please. So here, this is the picture of harvested clams. And this clam, what happens in order to remove it from the shell? So it is like a family business. So the men, they go out for fishing early in the morning, and by around 11, 12, the fishing is over, and they come back to their home, and it is slowly boiled so that the valve of the clam opens, and then the meat is shut. And once the meat is shut, there are agents who go to these fishermen houses and collect it. And that is what you see here. So this clam meat is the one that is exported and has a great value for export. Yeah, next slide, please. And this is basically the statistics. So how many families are involved in this particular activity? So it is like 12,000 tons that is harvested. 95% of it is exported, and it brings a revenue of around 10 crore annually. But before getting the certified, there was an issue with this particular clam. So this clam is not only used for human consumption, it also goes into the cement industry. The shell is basically slated lime and goes into cement industry. So people normally tend to become greedy when they get more money, right? So these people also started harvesting the younger ones, the smaller ones. The smaller ones never can go for food. It goes to the cement industry, and ultimately what happened? They began exploiting the juveniles, the smaller ones, and the biomass went down. So when the biomass goes down, what happens? One is the filtering capacity of this estuary reduces. Second is it also hits their livelihood. So these 3,000 families, what I mentioned, purely depend on the clams for their livelihood. So they then decided that they will have a self-imposed ban, like they will not fish the clams during its breeding season or when the small clams are settled. It's called a spat. So when the spat settlement takes place, they will not exploit. And that has been going on for 20 years. But even though it was what we say a management system which they decided, it did not become a law. So if it doesn't become a law, in our country, if there is no law, then people tend to they do not abide by the law. So here also sometimes that happened. But during the certification process, we got this particular law into the Fisheries Regulation Act. And ultimately, the fishery was certified in 2014. And once a fishery is certified, every 5 years, it has to be recertified. And every year, there is also a surveillance audit to see whether all the protocols have been formed. And this also led to a governing council. And this was the first governing council for a living resource in India, wherein you have the district collector as the chairman, the deputy director of fisheries as the convener, and then all the stakeholders. And mainly the stakeholders are the producers. So the producers are the ones who are really benefited. And then we have scientists from Research Institute, the officials from the Export Inspection Agency, the export houses. So that forms the council. So the council is now, even now, it is still active. So any decision that impacts the producer or the producer wants to raise something which is really impacting their livelihood can be raised in these council meetings. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so these are basically the benefits of certification. So the fishing industry, it is definitely a recognition of a good management. You have newer markets, and it also ensures traceability. For the retailers and the wholesalers, that is the ones who aggregate it and sell it, it is a confidence in the sustainability of the product. And as a consumer like us, so if we are eating or consuming this particular product, that means we are contributing, we are not contributing to the overfishing of the ecosystem. We are supporting the management efforts. And lastly, it also gets a price premium. So if a certified product is exported, the importer or the retail market, which is outside India, gives a premium for this particular certified product. I think this is the last slide. Okay, I made it very simple. Yeah, thank you for your listening.
Thank you so much, Vinod. I think so. This was a very interesting session and very interesting to know how clams are being managed and is also generating revenue for us and is also being managed sustainably. I'm sure there would be a lot of questions. So I will again, in the interest of time, let's take 4 questions maximum, and then we can go ahead.
Okay.
So can I request someone who's not had a chance to ask a question at all since morning? So let me just can I have Chahat Kumari from Meghalaya to ask the question? Please unmute yourself, Chahat.
Good afternoon, one and all presenter. Sir, first of all, the session was informative and thank you for sharing this. And so, sir, my question to you is, under the MSc principle you shared, like to get the conditions certified, what are the obstacles you face to get those conditions to get those conditions certified? Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
So that is a great question. So in this particular clam fishery, the only obstacle which I mentioned was to get the protocol, like a self-imposed ban, which was a protocol, to be a part of the law. I'm saying this was with regard to clam, which is a very regional resource. But if you take a resource which is there all along the west coast or the east coast, the biggest challenge is the number of vessels and also the number of nets that we use. So the nets that we mostly use are very non-selective. So that means you get the bigger ones, you get the smaller ones, and then to bring it under a law or a protocol to actually bring a law saying that you should be exploiting only the bigger ones, only the mature ones. That is the biggest challenge. And that too, to get that into a law, like into the Marine Fisheries Regulation Act, is another big challenge, and it will take so many years. And I also forgot to mention that since this is a regional resource, it's very easy to manage. But if it is a resource that is all along the coast, it is very difficult, and you need to have multiple state understanding, and then you need to get the law part of the Marine Fisheries Regulation Act. So these were basically the management principles were the biggest challenge that were addressed. And right now we have around 10 species of fish that are moving towards certification. And as you mentioned, these are the major challenges. Yeah. I hope I was clear. Okay, thank you.
Next, I would request someone who's named Odisha delegation. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you again, sir, for a lovely insight. And my question to you, sir, is, are there any unique characteristics or behaviors of clam species that makes them particularly vulnerable or resilient in the face of climate change? Thank you, sir.
Okay. So for clams, I think the vulnerability is very less. But when you consider fish, so fish, that too, the pelagic fish, what happens is when there is warming of the waters, normally this fish have a tendency to move to the cooler regions for breeding. So what happens is then there is a shift from the real realm where these animals are found into the realm where there is cooler waters. So that there is an impact, and that really has an impact also on certification, because if you say a particular state had a particular animal in that particular state, now the distribution has changed, and when we do certification, we will also have to consider factors that has causes migration, and also when you look at the stock and when you do the stock assessment, it also has a lot of challenges. So that is the direct impact of climate change on the smaller pelagic. So with clams might be, I think, might be the breeding season might be altered if there is a rise in temperature, or if there is too much of freshwater influx, there might be the breeding season might be altered. And if the breeding season is altered, then we will have to make changes in the law saying that the breeding season has changed. So the fishery also has to be changed according to the breeding season and the spat settlement. I hope I was clear. Okay. Thank you.
The next and the last question by Mopi Remo from Arunachal Pradesh. Please go ahead and unmute yourself to ask the question.
Okay, good afternoon, sir. Sir, so my question to you is, what is the role of marine ecosystem services in supporting sustainable blue economies?
Okay, fine. So anyways, this sustainable blue economy means you produce a product that is sustainable and in a manner, and you have income from that particular produce in a sustainable manner, right? So definitely certification is part of the sustainable blue economy because sustainability is the major part. And when sustainability happens, the direct benefit goes to the producer. So that is the role that certification plays with regard to what you say, the sustainable blue economy. I think it was like a very simple answer, but there are so many nuances to that which I don't think I have time to explain. But as a direct answer, this is what I want to say here.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Vinod, for this session. And I'm sure, today the delegates, they didn't just learn about WWF India's efforts to conserve the very precious biodiversity. I'm sure you also inspired them to pursue a career in environment and conservation. And then they begin to see this also, because all these students from grades 9 to 12 are at the cusp of deciding the career path. So I'm sure it was equally inspiring for all of them. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for your time and such a wonderful presentation. Thanks
Thank
a
you,
lot.
Neha. And also, I would like inspire the students who are on the call to also become like auditors, to do the auditing because we don't have any qualified auditors in India. We have only one auditor. So that is also one of the challenges when we move to certification. We will have to depend on people who are outside India for certification. I think on this note, I will end. Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you, Neha, and others for giving me this opportunity to present this case study here. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you, Vinod. I hope all the delegates have heard that there is a need for auditors. So if you wish to pursue a career in that field, you can go ahead and do that. If you need more information, you will have an opportunity to interact with all of us when you meet us in person at the on-ground MCOP conference in Delhi. So, thank you so much, Vinod and all the delegates for this
Thank you.
patience. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye. Yeah. Bye, Vinod. Thanks. Over to you, Avni.
Thank you so much, Neha ma'am, for moderating that session. So I think before we proceed to the final part of our the day, we will have quick pictures, and I want all of you to say cheese and smile in front of the camera. We are taking screenshots. Whoever has not, please turn on your cameras so that we can take your picture. Waiting for more people to turn on their cameras, please. It's okay if your camera is not working. There's somebody else who's turning on the cameras. Please do it now. Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for this, for so much patience. And now we want to conclude the session. So we want to do a quick recap where we want to know 2 things that you learned from the session today. I want you to put them down quickly in a minute in the chat box. What are the 2 important things that you learned today? What about the clam industry in Kerala? Role of women in biodiversity.
Drop-off हो रहा है.
Women's participation in nature. Okay, so I request all the delegates to stay back. You can still keep putting your answers in the chat box, but we have a very important information to share with all of you. So we will be discussing the plans for Delhi, and we'll also be talking about the elections. all the observers who have joined us on YouTube and on our website can now may leave the session as our live stream is now ending. Thank you so much for joining us. I want the delegates to stay back. And we will see you all next week on the 10th of July, where the delegates will be here with us in Delhi.